Hello, as we wait on those to join us, for everyone to join us via Facebook Live, I want to thank you for joining us for this talk on mental health and COVID-19. With me today, I have Yolanda Ford, who is a therapist, and we'll be talking today. Thank you so much for joining us on today, Yolanda.
Thank you for having me.
Let me ask, could you just briefly give us a background of your profession, of what you do?
Sure. So I am Yolanda Ford, and I am the owner of Wonderfully Made You Counseling. It was started in Houston, Texas, and now that we are in Connecticut, it is now in Connecticut as well. I am a licensed professional counselor, as well as I do have my MDiv, my Master of Divinity from Baylor University. And so I've been a licensed professional counselor for, I think, 8 years now. And I've had my business for the last 4 years. And so now with everything going on, my business is 100% online now. So I'm doing a lot of teletherapy, looking at talking with a lot of my clients on the computer or on the phone or iPad or whatever instruments they have.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let me just say before we move on, we are having difficulties logging into our conference call number. We continue to try, however, to no avail. So please use our YouTube page or our Facebook page because of that. Thank you. So Yolanda, I just want to talk for a little while on mental health as it concerns the COVID-19. Since we've been at home for the last 2 weeks, if not longer, it has taken a toll on a lot of us. Could you talk about that some?
Yeah, so we as humans, we are very social creatures. We were made to be social. And so now that we have this thing called social distancing, that has really, really affected us, not only our physical distancing, but it has also affected us mentally and spiritually as well. And so we are needing to learn how to live in our new normal. Right now, things are, from what the reports that I've been reading, that things are, that the curve is flattening, especially up here in New York and Connecticut, which is wonderful. However, that still doesn't make us feel any better, those of us who are at home, okay? Those of us who are still separated from our loved ones, separated from friends, and then even those who are now having to work from home, that's something different. Those who are now having to 100% use technology when you've not had to have to do that before. And then with the kids are now at home, and now you have these parents who were not expecting to homeschool their kids for possibly the rest of the year. I'm one of them. But you have those kids as well. And so it's really, really difficult to go from your normal to what is now your new normal in almost a blink of an eye. So, we're having to really adapt to that, and adapting is difficult. Adjusting is difficult for anyone.
Tell me, what are some of the issues that have come up because of social distancing and the orders to stay at home?
So one of the biggest things is anxiety and worry. Well, of course, we are so concerned about our health, okay? We're concerned about the health of those around us. We're concerned about the unknown. There was so much about this disease that nobody knew. And still at this moment, really, there's a lot that's unknown. And so the unknown is scary to us. The unknown is very, very difficult. However, it's getting better. That part is getting better. But also the worry about the economy, those people who they had to stop working, maybe they're not getting paid right now. Okay, that's a huge worry. How am I going to pay my mortgage, my rent, my insurance? How am I going to bring in food? Because the bills are still going on, and even though we're getting $1,200, in the stimulus, $1,200 doesn't go very far. Okay, and then you're worried about when we do return, when is that going to happen? You're also worried about what is it going to look like in the next 60, 90 days? What is life going to be like? And so there's a lot of unknowns that you don't know. But the anxiety and the worry is one of the biggest issues that we are dealing with right now.
Thank you. So how do we cope with this anxiety?
So let me kind of give you a definition of anxiety. Anxiety is the unhelpful, get that, unhelpful thinking patterns that you experience when your mind fixates or obsesses on a threat, uncertainty, or negativity. Okay, that's what anxiety is. And it is natural to worry. In this new COVID-19 world, we have concerns, we have worries, we have anxieties. But it's about what you do with those worries and anxieties that's going to help you to get through what we're dealing with right now. This is unprecedented times. And, I pray that we never have to go through this ever again, but this is something that's new. And so anxiety and worry is real. Even for Christians, it's real. I know what the Bible says. I do, because I love Jesus too. But anxiety and worry is real. But I go back to say it's what you do with that anxiety, what you do with that worry, will determine how you get through this part of life.
All right. So let me ask you this. You're using both the words anxiety and worry. Are they two different things? How would you define anxiety for us? But what would your definition be of worry?
So anxiety and worry, I would put them in the same category. Anxiety is a more clinical term because you can be diagnosed with anxiety. You can't be diagnosed with worry, but you can be diagnosed with anxiety. But they're really both the same thing. If you have a concern, it's a few steps above a concern. Okay? And so it's where you are fixated, you're obsessed over something that you probably do not have any control over.
Okay. So what can we do when we experience anxiety or worry?
So there are a few things that you actually can do. One of them is, and I have a few tips for us in dealing with, it's actually 10 tips, in dealing with living in this new COVID-19 world, okay? But when we're dealing with anxiety, we're dealing with worry, we have to really figure out, is this something that I can control? Because one, if it's something that we can control, what is it that we can do about it? And then once we define what we can do about it, do it. That's it, do it. Now, if it's something that we can't control, then we need to start saying, okay, I can't control this. I have to accept that I cannot control this. And now I've got to start focusing on something else because I can't control it. That's just like the weather. The weather here yesterday, it was bad, okay? We cannot control the weather. There's nothing we can do about the weather. So what do? we have to start focusing on something else because that's something we can't control. So the same thing about worrying about this COVID-19. What can you do? What can you control? Well, you can stay in the house, okay? You can wear your mask if you have to go out. You can wear your gloves, okay? You can social distance, do your 6 feet. You can work from home. You can do all those things. Those are things that you can control. Now, whether the economy opens back up May 20th, that's something that you can't control. So that's something that, okay, I can't control. Let me focus on something that I can control.
Okay. You said 10 tips. Are those all 10 tips?
Well, I
didn't count all 10.
No, I haven't got to the 10 yet, but I can give you the 10 now.
All right,
You
come
ready
on.
for the 10? Okay. All right, so the first tip is minimize your news watching and your social media use, okay? That is something that will create worry. You will ruminate over that over and over and over again because that's all you see. You wake up in the morning, you turn the news on, or you grab your phone and you start scrolling, right? Okay. Before you go to bed at night, you're looking at social media. I would suggest that you pick one time of the day, and it's not before you, after you wake up and before you go to bed, that you look at the news, be informed, find out what's going on, yes. However, find one time of the day and look at the news or whatever credible news outlet that you have and look at it. Get the facts, digest it. Okay, let's keep going with our day. Let's not stay on it because if you stay on it, then you find yourself, again, ruminating over that over and over and over again where it becomes an obsession, okay? Next one, give yourself some grace. I always tell my clients this because a lot of times we are so hard on ourselves about what we should be doing, what we haven't done, what we need to be doing, what we could be doing. You know what? This is all new to us. Everybody is doing the very best they can with the situation that they have been given. So you have to give yourself some grace. You have to, because nobody has been in this situation before. I pray we never have to be in this situation again, but you have to give yourself some grace. Also, let's see if we can reframe what this is, okay? And when I say reframe, I mean let's look at it from a different perspective, okay? Yeah, we're stuck at home, but instead of saying we're stuck at home, we're safe at home.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's big.
And instead of saying that I have to homeschool my kids, you know, I'm spending more time with my kids and I'm investing a lot of time and energy in their education now. Okay. That's how you're reframing what's going on. Okay. Or I'm cooking a lot. Okay. And I know I'm cooking a whole lot more. And you can't just go to the fast food restaurants anymore, okay? But instead of, dreading to cook all the time, you know what? I'm able to make healthy decisions for my family, okay? And we're able to possibly sit down and have a meal together, okay? So we're reframing this thing on what it looks like.
So we may not have we may not have the ability to be able to control what's going on the outside, but we can control how we view what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can. And I will talk a little more about that control, about what's on the inside. Another thing you can do is thought stopping. Okay, I'm using some of these clinical terms here, but that's okay. They're real simple. thought stopping. What you can do is use the acronym THINK, okay? Because we have a lot of thoughts that go through our mind throughout the day. Lots of thoughts, good, negative, some that shouldn't even go through our mind, So let's think about this, okay? I want you to assess if those thoughts we're using THINK, THINK, if they are true, if they're helpful, if they're inspiring, if they're necessary, and if they're kind. Okay, I'm sure that the kids have this on their walls in the halls at school. But those are the things that we want to find out about, the thoughts that are going through our minds. Okay, that will help us to assess whether those thoughts are needed. Because if they are not, then we need to throw them away. We need to get rid of it, and we need to refocus again on what we can control. Okay? One quote says, "You have power over your mind, not outside events."
Wow.
So realize this, and you will find strength. Okay? And of course, you can go back to the Bible with this, where the Bible says, as a man thinks, so is he. Talks about the mind again, okay? Also, in that thought stopping, you focus on what you can control, okay? We've been talking about that. So when we shift our focus on what we can control, we see meaningful and lasting differences in our well-being, our health, and our performance, okay? And some of the things that we can control, when we do that, our well-being, our health, and our performance, we start building resilience. Okay, I'll talk about how going through this season in our life, that sometimes people may have experienced those stages of grief. Not that you've necessarily lost anybody, but you've lost the normalcy of life.
Yes.
Okay. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. But follow the latest credible information and advice. These are things that you can control. You're focusing on what's important to you, your routine, relaxing, eating well, exercising, seeking support, staying safe in our home, okay, away from potential public hazards, washing your hands and sanitizing boxes and deliveries and that kind of thing, and wearing your mask and your gloves. That's what you can control, okay? What you can't control would be other people's decisions, other people's health, the news, the government's actions, schools opening or closing, the state of our healthcare system. Those are things that you can't control, but you focus on what you can control, okay? Another tip is self-care, okay? Self-care. And a lot of times we bring self-care as to mean selfish, but it doesn't. Self-care means that you're caring for yourself, because if you can't care for yourself, then you can't pour into anybody else, okay? I always use this example. When you fly on an airplane, when they come out and describe to you about your seat belts and your face mask, they say when that mask drops down, you put yours on first, and then you help somebody else. Well, you have to take care of yourself first before you can help anybody else, because if the pressure drops and you're trying to help somebody else, you're going to pass out, and you probably won't even be able to help the other person.
All right. Quickly, let's get to the last couple.
Okay. So you're rushing me through this, right? Okay, I got this. So, okay, so we have self-care, exercise, move your body, eat good food, okay? I know that we have a lot of things about, our snacks, our quarantine snacks, but try to eat good foods, okay? Reading, take an online class, get sufficient rest, okay? Also, stay connected, okay? That's number 6. Stay connected, do an online worship, online Bible study, prayer groups, FaceTime your relatives and your friends. All of your regular meetings are online, like AA, NA, all of those. There's a house party app where you can play games face to face with people. Number 7, acknowledge and share your feelings. We need to recognize how stress affects our bodies, okay? And then we need to acknowledge whether we're anxious, stressed, worried, fearful, lonely, okay? And again, some of us have gone through those stages of grief, which are denial, bargaining, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and then there's a 6th one, David Kessler has said, finding meaning, okay? And then also determine what your triggers are. If you hear the word COVID-19, coronavirus, or just seeing people with masks and gloves on, if that's a trigger, then we need to refocus yourself and then find places where you're not looking at that, okay? Journal. Also, see a therapist. Right now, most co-pays are waived for most insurers. So, see a therapist, okay? Number 8, create a daily routine. Get up out the bed, shower, do all that good stuff. Go for a walk. I'm telling you to move. Get outside. You need that outside fresh air. Number 9, create visible reminders, okay, or a healthy environment. Do a gratitude journal. Ask yourself, what am I grateful for? Do vision boards, affirmation posters, okay, aromatherapy. Paint and put them up, okay? And then number 10, this is a time for us to exercise our faith that we talk about and that we quote scripture about, okay? So that's why it's so important to saturate our environment with all of these encouraging things.
What would you just say, because there are those who are just scared and fearful. What would you say to those who are just scared and fearful?
Definitely you need support, okay? Because I know that we hear that you're not alone in this thing, but you are alone in this thing, technically, but you need support. And that support can come in the form of family. That's why I say FaceTime, Zoom with family members on a regular basis. Get you a therapist. A therapist will be there, confidential, to talk to you, to walk you through this. But you need to be in connection with other people. And you need that support. You really need that support. Even if you are, doing these 10 things, you need support to encourage you to continue to do that.
Wonderful, wonderful. My next question is, where can I go to find help?
So there are lots of places. One, if you do have insurance, you can always call your insurance. There's a number on the back of your insurance card where you can call and they will tell you what type of, who is in your network. You can do that. You can always go to psychologytoday.com. There's a list of therapists that you can find in your area. And you can also, if you do not have insurance or if you do not have a way to pay, if you are on a job that has EAPs or employee assistance programs, you can have 5 to 8 sessions of therapy for free. Just contact your EAP provider. But also call 211. That's your local, they can connect you to your local mental health authority to help you with this if you're not able to pay.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we just put a number up on the screen for anyone who have questions, and you may want to text those questions in. We do welcome that. Please use that number, and your text will be anonymous. But let me ask this, or you may give your question via the Facebook chat as well. Let me ask you this. What should our response be when we talk about looking at loved ones that have passed because of COVID-19? How do we begin to handle that grief?
This is a different time for us because right now we are not able to even have funerals for our loved ones. And funerals really symbolize closure. And right now we're not able to do that because of this virus. In dealing with this grief, again, we need support. We need each other. Okay, if you are able to be there for that loved one, do it. Okay, if you are able to. However, we still need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves because we still do not know a lot about this virus and what's going on with it. But we need that support. So if you do have someone who is sick, who is dealing with this, or if you are the one that's caring for someone, or if one of your loved ones has passed and you're not able to, one of my friends just said that exact same thing has happened, and there's nothing that they can do. They can't go and see their relatives. They can't get a hug from their relatives. They can't go and make arrangements for their relatives now. So this is a very difficult time for us. So we've got to be as supportive and supported as possible. We've got to use all of the technology that we can right now, because right now that's really all that we have.
Yeah, it was amazing. I did a graveside committal a couple days ago, and literally, first time ever, it was myself, the funeral director, and one family member who was about 10 feet away taping. And I know that had to be hard. There were other family members who were not able to come because they had to isolate themselves because they themselves had come down with COVID-19. How do we not beat ourselves up for not being able to be there during times like this because we may be infected or affected?
Yeah, you know, again, this is new and unprecedented times, and we've got to, one, again, extend that grace to ourselves, because this is something that we cannot control. This is something we just absolutely have no control over. And so we've got to extend ourselves that grace, that it's not our fault, we didn't do it, we could not be there for that person. There are very different situations where you choose not to be there for someone versus you cannot be there for someone. And so I know that it's easier said than done, but grieve, cry, shout, do whatever you need to do in order to be able to wake up again the next morning and live, because this is difficult, and you can't just say, well, get over it, because you can't. You really have no closure. So you have to do whatever you need to do in order to handle it at that moment. Acknowledge that you cannot handle this. You cannot. And you need the strength of God to help you through this, to carry you through this. This is a difficult situation.
Someone wrote, is it possible for this pandemic to cause or to trigger PTSD?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. There's a lot of that going on, as a matter of fact. There are lots of triggers that will be that will be set off because of this. And it is totally possible for the PTSD. That's why I say we all need support through this. So if you know that you have PTSD, or you know someone who does, I would really encourage them to get help now, because that PTSD is real. That's post-traumatic stress syndrome disorder. You really need to have some support to walk you through this. You really, really need that support. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that will manifest itself after all of this is over. And so is domestic violence, child abuse, alcoholism, and drug abuse. Those things are going to come out in great number after all this is over.
Let's talk about that. You said domestic violence, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. Why are those things increasing during this time?
One, everybody's in the house together. for such a long period of time. Before, you could go and cool off and go walk away for something, and now you really can't do that. Before, you had outlets. Now you have no outlets or very limited outlets. Before, people were not spending as much time with each other. I mean, for days and weeks on end, and so those emotions are raw. And then there's lots of stressors in the air. There's lots of financial stressors, and then there's stressors of the unknown. And those are the things that are that will, I don't want to say cause domestic violence, but those are the things that are that can precipitate what's going on. And so it's going to happen. It's going to happen, as well as child abuse, because teachers were the #1 reporters of child abuse. Well, now the kids are in the home. So who's reporting these kids? I mean, who's reporting the abuse of these kids now? So it's going to happen. Unfortunately, it's going to happen.
Thank you. Let me ask. There are many who will say that they feel helpless as they see their loved ones go to the hospital. I've heard story after story about individuals having to let their loved ones go to the hospital. And they can't go into the hospital. They can't be with them during that time. What do you say to those individuals?
You know, one, you're not helpless, especially if you know Christ, because even though you can't go in with them, you know God is walking in there with them. God is there with them, holding their hand, watching over them. What you can do is to pray all day over that person. Just call their name. Get your friends, get your family to do a prayer chain for them, to be praying over them. You can't do anything about it. This is one of those times where you have to just say, I am helpless, but I'm not hopeless. You may be helpless where you can't do anything. So now you have to release it all to God. You're in a position where you can't do anything. You can do nothing, but you're not hopeless. And so you have to turn it over to Him. That's why it's always, this is a great time for you to start looking at what you can do and what you are thankful for, what you do have gratitude for, because that's going to help you to get through this. You're thankful for the nurses and the doctors that are there with your loved one.
Wow. What about those who suffer from anxiety? Deborah Walker, what about those who suffer from anxiety? What can they do? I know you touched on that earlier.
Yeah. So those who suffer from anxiety, you know, if you've ever been to a therapist or a psychiatrist before, they would always give you some tools that will help you to deal with your anxiety, okay? Even if you go to a psychiatrist, they may give you some medicine to deal with your anxiety. And so that's what you do. You take your medication as prescribed, and then you do those exercises, or you have those coping mechanisms. You can breathe, okay? We don't think about breathing, but when we breathe shallow, okay? But if we're there to breathe deeply, where we breathe in through our nose, count to 3, and breathe out through our mouth and count to 5, and we repeat that a number of times. Repeat that 10 times. That calms us down. When we ground ourselves, when we have our feet on the floor, we don't ever feel the floor. But we need to be able to feel our feet on the floor, okay? It's called grounding. And so you put your heels into the floor. You tense different muscle groups in your body separately so that you can feel the here, the right now. Anxiety takes you out of the present. You want to be back into the present. So you start doing that along with your breathing. Sometimes you can't do that, so you start naming things that are around you. I see a red car. I see a blue hat. I see a square mirror. Okay? You just start naming physical traits of things that you see. Start touching those things. Okay? Here's my table. Here's my chair. Here's my pillow. Okay?
Wow.
You start doing those types of things, and that brings you back into the now. And I have to tell people all the time, you can't do these things just one time and expect a miracle. These are things that you have to consistently do when you start feeling that way.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Another question that has come in is, how do we explain what's going on to our children?
Yeah. You know, my daughter, Alexandria, she would come home and she would tell, not come home, but she would be at home, and, you know, we'd walk out the room, whatever, and come back in, and she'd start telling us about COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And I'm like, girl, how are you knowing about all this, you know? But when we're talking to our kids, and depending on how old they are, my daughter is 5 years old. Our daughter is 5 years old.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
And so, you know, you have to be very concrete with that age group. Okay, so up until about 10, you have to be very concrete with them about what's going on, because they miss their friends, they miss their teachers. They're now having to learn on the computer now. Okay, and they're out of their routine. So you talk to them, you know, and tell them that, you know, some people are getting sick, and so we want to keep you safe here, okay? And that's what the schools want you to do. We want to keep you safe. Now, we don't want to alarm them, but we also don't want to shelter them from the reality of what's going on, but also give them lots of activities that will help them to, again, appreciate what's going on and to show gratitude about what they have.
And, you know, I found out that sometimes our kids know more than we think they know, or more than we know ourselves.
Yeah.
One day I came back from the church, and I was talking to Alexandria, and I said, Allie, would you like some pizza? She said, yeah, Daddy, but if we get the pizza, we have to put it in the microwave so we can make sure we kill the COVID. And I asked, where did you hear that? I saw it on the news, Daddy. And so they're watching it just like us. And they have questions, and their anxieties are able to become intensified as well. So I think we really need to really watch our children. I was just reading an article, 15-year-old young lady took her life at home in her room because she did not know how to cope with being home.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is that kids feed off of adults, okay? If you are calm, then they're calm. If you are overly anxious, then they will be overly anxious, okay? If you exude that you are hopeless, then that's exactly what they will do as well. Also, keep them connected to their class, keep them connected to their friends at church, or, you know, from baseball or cheerleading, and also keep them connected to family members as well. And try to do a routine, keep a routine with them to where, you know, they're still in the routine of, you know, getting up, making their bed, eating breakfast, doing their work, you know, all that, because kids need structure. This is not a time to stop structure. Kids need structure.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just received a text. I have a family member that is currently in the hospital battling COVID-19. And I know that we're not supposed to question God, but I keep finding myself asking, why is this person, you know, why him? You know, he's such a good person, and I'm sure every other person that has a loved one that is suffering asking the same question, but I just want to get around that question. if that makes any sense to you. I'm glad that question has come up. That's one of the things that we talked about this morning in our daily devotional. I have questions, and whether we're supposed to question God. For so long, growing up, you always heard, you ought never question God.
Yeah.
You just accept what he allows. But that's not true. We find in Job, he goes on a rant in questioning God, starting with chapter 3. And he questions God continuously. And he said, God, I'm just going to let you know how I feel. Here's the thing. God does not mind us questioning him.
Yeah.
He's big enough to handle our questions. He's sovereign enough to say, listen, I want you to question. I want you to get it all out.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me you feel angry. I want you to tell me you feel upset.
Yeah.
I want you just to put it out on the table. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm big enough to handle that. Here's the thing. We may not always get the answers that we want, though. Even though Job asks all these questions to God, at no point does God just come out and tell him, this is why, Job, you're going through this suffering.
Yeah.
It's not about questioning God. The issue is questioning the righteousness of God's character. That's what God has an issue with, questioning the righteousness of his character. Well, God, are you still good? Yes, he's still good, even in spite of what we're going through. While God does not cause these things to happen because of his permissive will and because of sin that has entered into this world, that's why we see things like the pandemic and COVID-19. But again, God does not mind us asking the questions. He wants us to ask the questions and to be honest with him how we feel. But in being honest with him, we can't stay there. At some point, you have to get yourself together and say, even in the spite of this, God, I vow to trust you because I can't do anything about it. I'm helpless. God, I'm going to trust you. Question God, but don't ever question his righteous character.
Yeah. And you know, when you say God wants to know how you feel, you have to acknowledge those feelings. You have to. If you do not acknowledge how you feel, then you cannot work through it. That's just as simple as. You have to acknowledge that you're angry. This person who just texted about their loved one in the hospital, why? Why is he here? He's a good person. Acknowledge that you're angry. Acknowledge that you're dismayed by it. Yeah, God is so big that he can handle it. He is so, but it also helps you because you got to get those feelings out. You have to.
Yeah. Let me ask, we're talking about mental health and COVID-19. This has not always been popular in minority communities, talking about mental health. As a matter of fact, most of the time, if there was ever a mental health issue, they'll tell you just go to church, God's going to handle it, pray on it. Or, we all had that family member who we all knew had mental health issues. However, we just locked them up in the back room and we just ignored them. Let's talk about mental health in minority communities.
Yeah. So it's been a huge breakthrough, not just with COVID-19 this season, but in the past few years, it's been a huge breakthrough, and I thank God all the time for that, because we are now, our community, and especially the Black church, is able to reap the benefits of freeing ourselves to seek help, okay? Because for so long in the Black household, it was taught that whatever goes on in the house stays in the house. Well, if dysfunction is in the house, then it's going to stay there. It's never going to be fixed, okay, or addressed. And so now you have it where, you know what? Okay, I got to get help with this. This is not how my life should be. This is not how I'm feeling. This is there's something not right here. And so I want to get help with this. And so there has been the stigma is lifting, where you are now able to go and see a psychiatrist or go and see a therapist or a psychologist about whatever it is, because we deal with depression, we deal with anxiety, then we have, you know, a lot of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. We have a lot of these things that are going, even if you're just moving from one place to the next, there's a lot of adjustment disorders out there where you just need a little support in walking you through change. That's it. So we're able to now say, you know what, I have the strength, I have the freedom to actually see somebody. And now, because of the season we're in, you don't even have to get out your house. You can just log onto your computer and there's your support right there. So it's been a great freedom, and I'm seeing an influx of African American males now. As a matter of fact, they make up most of my my clientele at the moment, and so I love that, and I applaud them each time they come to see me. I tell them specifically that I'm glad to see you. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to share with us?
I really would like for everybody to get help. I'm not saying that you have to get help from me, okay? I am licensed in Texas, but I'm also licensed in Connecticut. You don't have to get help through me, but I would encourage everybody to see somebody, to speak with somebody, to get some type of support during this time. I mean everybody, because this is a huge change. So don't ever think that you were too big or too popular or too, you know, I make too much money, or, you know, I have this high position where, you know, I don't need help. No, everybody in this moment needs help. Everybody needs help. So I would encourage you, if I'm not the one to help you, I can try and steer you towards some resources, but I would really encourage everybody in this moment to get help. Again, most insurers are doing away with copays, so there's nothing that you have to pay up front to see a therapist.
Let me ask, are there any free resources out there that we can take advantage of?
There are free resources. Again, if you dial 211 anywhere that you are, if you dial 211, they can connect you to your local mental health authority, your local mental health authority, and they can help you to locate free resources for mental health at that point.
Let me ask, just as a final question, how can we, because I know we focused a lot on ourselves, but how can we encourage others during this time?
We can encourage others by, one, staying positive, okay? When we start hearing other people talking negatively, or, you know, just talking down, or if they are, you know, attacking maybe something that the government is talking about, or some new restrictions that they've talked about, we can try and use that word that I said before, reframing, where we are steering them away from that, and we are talking about something else that's positive, or we can tell them that, you know what, a lot of this stuff they're doing is for our safety, okay? And so that's one way that we can support other people, is to be encouraging to them, to be there as well. Do that Zoom and the FaceTime, and, you know, whatever else you can, you know, even if it's for, you know, 10 minutes. Do a happy hour, virtual happy hour with your friends, okay? Do a lunch date with a friend, you know, once a week. Try and get back into whatever type of normalcy that you can do, knowing that it's not like it was, but you're trying.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on today. I think you've given us all a lot to think on and some great tips that can help us through this time. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, thank everyone for joining us for this special conversation on mental health and COVID-19. I pray that you were blessed by it on this evening. Listen, know that we love you and we are praying for you.
Definitely.
All right. You have a blessed day.